Hey everybody, and welcome to week 6 of our class here at Purdue Global University on EM 410, the global environment. This week we have our usual 2 discussion boards going. Remember, we have seminar this coming Monday night. And remember, there is a paper in Unit 6, and I did cover that in the Unit 5 seminar. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, if you weren't there, or if you need a refresher, at the very beginning of class on the archive version, you should hear me going over the Unit 6 paper. If not, guys, look at the instructions in the class. And please feel free to text, email, or call me if you have any questions concerning the paper and what it's requiring. Interesting week this week too, guys. We are examining what I refer to as the North-South gap. This is a subject matter that crosses out of our area of environmental politics and in the environment over into regular politics, economics, global security, you name it. This is one of the big key issues is the North-South gap. Basically, how you get about this is we have classifications for nations. We here in the United States are a first world nation. We have a very high, what we refer to as a gross domestic product or GDP, high standard of living, education, infrastructure. All those things exist in first world nations. So in the first world, you have the United States, Canada, crosses over into Europe, parts of Asia. Then you have what we refer to as the second world. Second world is Russia, the former Eastern Warsaw Pact countries, Poland, Austria, Croatia, Serbia, all of those different nations who are in a transition from their former communist past up into a modern global economic system. And then you have what we refer to as the third world. The third world encompasses a ton of nations on the surface of this planet. These are nations that have very low gross domestic product and sometimes even none to negative gross domestic product. They're outspending what they're making. They have extremely poor infrastructure, have high rates of mortality in terms of infant mortality, in terms of deaths at a young age. A lot of these nations have unstable governments, goes back and forth between civilian and military rule. You name it, these nations have tons of problems. Low technology, low education. These are nations that have a lot of, like I said, a lot of things that they need to overcome. What we're looking at here, guys, is and this creates environmental issues that are unique between the first world nations and the third world nations. The third world nations deal with issues that we do have here in the first world. We do have poverty, we have hunger, we have starvation, but not at the massive levels you see in the third world. A lot of these nations have poor environments that have large-scale droughts. We've seen in the Horn of Africa for several times, with Somalia, with Ethiopia, and the famine and the issues it created there. We see poor agricultural methods that create Dust Bowl type situations in these nations. You see all kinds of environmental issues that are being caused by lack of infrastructure, poor drinking water conditions, diphtheria, spread of disease like we saw with Ebola, like we've seen with other types of disease emerge in Africa as well too. So a lot of different things that are facing the third world. What's interesting about, we refer to it as the North-South gap, is that the first world, when you look at it, and it's very weird except for the exception of probably Australia, maybe South Africa, and Brazil is probably getting better. Most of the first world is located north of the equator. And then when you look at where the third world is, the majority of third world nations are in Central South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and large parts of Asia. They are below the equator. There's a lot of political demographics that come into play here. There's a lot of resentment between the third and first world in terms of the first world during the colonial period. The major powers of Britain, Spain, and France breaking up and creating nations in the third world and then governing them directly. So there's a lot of resentment between third and first world nations as well too, which does play a role into the first world helping these third world nations with their large systemic problems. So a lot of different things, guys, coming up this week on this topic. It's an extremely interesting topic. I'm really looking forward to our seminar on Monday night as we discuss it. Again, guys, have a great week. 2 discussion boards. The Unit 6 paper is due this week. It is not due at the end of Unit 7. It is due at the end of this week in Unit 6. Quiz this week as well too, guys, so good luck on the quiz. If you need me, you guys know, please email, text, or call me. I'll be here to help you guys any way I possibly can. With that, guys, have a great week.